The MMA fortune teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.
The teller is here for UFC 245, an extremely stacked card. We got 3 championship bouts on the line. I know as of recently I said we had a lot of solid cards, but this one's on a whole another level compared to anything that we've had recently. The main card, just take a look for a second. You got Usman Covington, Holloway Volkanovski, Amanda Nunes taking on Jermaine Durandamy, Jose Aldo going down to bantamweight to take on Marlon Moraes, 2 of the most dangerous Brazilian strikers in the game. And then you got Peter Yan taking on Uriah Faber. Faber fighting once again, after making his long-awaited return in his last fight. And he looked amazing against Ricky Simón. So, even on the undercard, man, we got Mike Platinum Perry, Matt Brown taking on Killa B, Ben Saunders. Just an extremely stacked card. So I'm super excited to break this fight card down. I'm super excited to watch the fights this Saturday, and I'm super excited to make more money coming off a very profitable weekend last Saturday. 2 for 2 on my bets, and I had a perfect card. Perfect card. I picked every single fight correct. Of course, you have to exclude the draws. That's the same way it goes with the bookmakers. If it's a draw, it never happened. So I believe we had a couple of draws in the card. So, but other than that, man, I picked every single fight correct. It's always good to do a card like that and have another one like those in the book. So. But again, I'll say it time and time again, it's not about full card picks. It's all about what you bet. And I bet 2 fights on that card. I went 2 for 2. For those of you guys that don't know what I bet as of now, I'll let you guys know the 2 bets that I had on the card. First and foremost was Ben Rothwell to defeat Stefan Struve. You guys heard what I had to say last week. Struve is he's fragile. I said it time and time again, man. This guy, when he gets hit, he gets dropped. He just seems to... he seems to be an unhealthy guy. It's not even that he's chinny. Something's up with him, man. The guy's had issues in the past with his heart or whatnot. Not saying that played a factor into why he lost the fight, but the guy's just a fragile guy. And against a guy like Ben Rothwell, who's just a complete tank, he's a moose. That's how I saw the fight going down. Of course, the nut shots kind of made that fight a little tricky, but, Ben Rothwell ended up getting that finish just as I said he would. My other play was Rob Font over Ricky Simón. That fight played out exactly as I thought it would too. I had a lot of time to study tape for this fight card. Those were the 2 fights that I really narrowed it down to. And, Rob Font came through in a great way. Just used his boxing, picked Ricky Simón apart in the feet. One point in time, Ricky Simón got a quick takedown. Rob Font scrambled right back to his feet. Rob Font is really putting it all together, and we could definitely have some future plays in him depending on who he's fighting. So I'll keep an eye on that. So other than talking about money with the teller, if we just take a look throughout the card, we had some exciting fights. Big shout out to Tim Means. I'm a big fan of his. Bounced back after a devastating loss to Nico Price and a brutal injury that happened to him. He bounced back in a solid way. Got the finish against Thiago Alves. Who else? Bryce Mitchell. Holy shit. Bryce Mitchell pulling off the twister against Matt Sales. I was very close to making a play on Bryce Mitchell. I did hesitate on that because Matt Sales is a very solid opponent. So kind of hesitated on that. Kind of wish I would have made the night 3 for 3, but it's okay. Shout out to Bryce Mitchell, though. That guy is definitely gunning for the featherweight division. He's going to be causing a lot of guys problems. We take a look at the main event, of course, man. How about that? Alistair Overeem almost has that fight in the bag and then ends up getting caught. I had Jairzinho Rozenstruik to win that fight. I did feel that he would be able to get to land a solid shot at one point in time in that fight. Who would have knew that he would have landed it with about 8 seconds or whatnot left in the fight after definitely going on his way to lose that fight if he didn't hit Alistair Overeem with that shot. So shout out to Rozenstruik, though, for staying in that fight and, digging deep to the last second. So we will begin to transition our way over to UFC 245. Quick PSA announcement. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Definitely check me out on Instagram as well. Of course, it is MMA Fortune Teller _. I do have a Twitter as well, The MMA Teller. Not always on Twitter as much as I am on Instagram, but feel free to follow me on all those social media platforms. Yeah, it's greatly appreciated. And yeah, let's transition our way over to UFC 245. Let's go. So kicking the card off, we have Punahele Soriano taking on Oscar Pichota. This is a solid fight, and I'll tell you why. It's strictly because of this guy, Soriano. For those of you guys that are not familiar with him, this guy's the real deal. He's a very entertaining fighter. This guy goes in there looking to decapitate his opponents. For those of you guys that are not familiar with him and you didn't see his first fight during the Dana White's Contender Series this last season, the guy, I don't want to say he talked a big game, but he said he was going to go out there and he was going to go to entertain and impress Dana White, and that's exactly what he did. That entire fight, he was just literally just trying to take off the head of his opponent. And he didn't get that finish, but I just loved the way that he fought that fight. And you could see that, his striking it's no joke. And he's going to land on a lot of guys throughout his career, and he's going to put a lot of them out. He already has a good amount of finishes in his only 6 professional fights. This may be one of those fights where we see him get another knockout, because Oscar Pichota, he's a solid fighter. He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. Even though he's been subbed in his last 2 fights, which is not a good look. I would take his last loss with a grain of salt. The guy that he lost to, Rodolfo Vieira, is one of the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners to ever step into the octagon. The guy's the real deal. I'm not just throwing that around there. The Vieira is as good as it gets when it comes to the jiu-jitsu game. So he was able to sub Pichota in the second round in that fight. I wouldn't look too much into that. But Pichota, he dropped the ball in the fight before that, getting subbed by Gerald Meerschaert. He should not be getting rear naked choked by a guy like GM3. Being a black belt in jiu-jitsu yourself, I didn't really like the way that looked. Up into those 2 fights, though, Pichota was on a roll. He was undefeated, and, he looked good in his second UFC fight against Tim Williams. Finished him in the first round. It was nasty. Before that, he took out Jonathan Wilson. You don't really hear too much about Wilson anymore, but the only thing that would worry me as far as taking Soriano in this fight, you could definitely tell by the way that he fights. I don't want to say he has cardio issues, but it's just the way that he fights. He's going to put himself out there to gas out in certain fights. When you're sprinting and you're throwing bombs like that for 15 minutes, towards that third round, man, you're going to gas. But that being said, I did like the way in his last fight, even when he was kind of gassed, he's the type of fighter that still pushes through. You could see that his body's kind of giving out, but he has a lot of heart. He's still going to get takedowns. He's athletic, and he's going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at your head. So, I'm going to take Soriano to win this fight, and I would not be surprised if he gets a finish. But I would not be surprised also if Pichota, was crafty in there, was able to survive to the later rounds and use his jiu-jitsu, maybe gas Soriano out and got on top at one point in time. What I'm getting at is the line's pretty much on. This is a hard fight to call, but I'm going with Soriano. I'm taking Soriano to win the fight. Transitioning over to the flyweight division, over on the women's side, we got Jessica Evil Eye taking on Viviane Arroyo. Jessica Eye, we got to start with her, huh? She's coming off, you guys know what I'm talking about, one of the most nasty finishes that we've ever seen inside the octagon. What Valentina Shevchenko did to her was just, it was disgusting. I just want to point something out, too. I've been saying Shevchenko is right there as, if not the best women's fighter I've ever seen fight. I had her winning at least one, if not both of those fights against Amanda Nunes. I would love to see them run that back. We'll talk about Amanda a little bit here as well, but I'm a big fan of Amanda too. But Shevchenko is she's sick, man. She's a whole nother animal. But back to these girls here. Jessica Eye is coming off a horrible knockout loss. We got to see how she's going to bounce back from something like that. Not that she was the most skilled fighter from the get-go or the most dependable fighter to have your money on from the get-go. So this isn't going to be a good spot for her either, taking on Viviane Arroyo. This girl's looked pretty good, very fit, athletic fighter, coming off a solid win against Alexis Davis, the crafty veteran. Before that, taking out Talita Bernardo, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. Got a nice finish in the third round in that fight. I've liked what I've seen from this girl, and I expect her to go out there and pull the fight off. Again, I'll say it time and time again. You got to be careful betting women's MMA in general. You know, if you're not talking about the top tier women, you have to be very careful. Although I would feel pretty confident that Viviane will pull this fight off. But, you know, Jessica Ai, you know, she's a weird fighter, man. She loses a lot of fights. She goes on a little 3-fight win streak. You know, she took out Jessica Rose Clark, unanimous decision. She did get a split decision victory over Caitlin Chikokian, who's really been doing her thing. But that fight was really close. It could have went either way. And then she got the very much undeserved title shot. But, yeah, so, you know, I'll take Viviane to win the fight. You got to go with her. As far as where the line's at and betting this fight, I mean, you got to try to get it at a decent line. You know, I wouldn't touch anything around minus 200 or above. If you can get it around minus 160, maybe you want to do something with it. Maybe not. Maybe, like I said, you want to stay away from these women's mixed martial arts fights for the most part. For the most part, at least fights like this. You know what I mean? So I'll tell you this much: I'll be staying away from this fight. Transitioning over to the men's side of the flyweight division, we got Kai Kara-France taking on Brandon Moreno. We'll start with Brandon Moreno for a second. Coming off a tough split decision draw in his last fight against Askarov, who definitely showed to be a tough opponent. So, you know, that was a solid showing for Brandon Moreno. This guy's only 26 years old. You know, this guy, he's a very dangerous fighter. From his striking to his jiu-jitsu game, the guy can finish the fight at any given time. You know, and he's fought some of the top guys in the division. If you look at his losses, you know, he lost to Alexander Pantoja, Sergio Pettis. You know, he lost to Pantoja as well back in the day on The Ultimate Fighter too. So other than that, you know, he goes out there and he handles business, you know, especially as of the last few years. And but now you're taking on the guy in Kai Kara-France. Kai Kara-France, when he goes in there, he doesn't lose. This guy's on about, a 9-fight win streak. Doesn't get a lot of finishes for the most part, especially as of recently. But, you know, when he goes in there, he's going to get the victory for the most part. And that's a good thing when you got action behind a guy like that. I do think that Brandon Moreno poses a lot more threats than some of the past opponents. So, you know, you got to be careful. I could see Moreno whipping that leg up there, getting a head kick knockout. I could see him pulling off a nasty sub. Or I can see Kai Kara-France just being very disciplined and just kind of outpointing Moreno, you know, controlling him a little bit against the cage and whatnot and pulling off the decision victory. And when it's all said and done, I probably lean more towards that scenario than the first scenario. So, yeah, I'll take Kai Kara-France to win by decision. I'll be pulling for Moreno. I hope Moreno can pull something off, man. The dude's a very entertaining, very enthusiastic fighter. So we'll have to see how that fight goes. So now we got Chase Hooper taking on Daniel Tamer, one of the Tamer brothers, who both have very dangerous, nasty Muay Thai striking. For those of you guys that don't know about Chase Hooper, this kid's the truth. You guys can fact check me or whatnot. I do believe he was the youngest person to ever receive a UFC contract. I believe he was 19 at the time, maybe even 18. I forget exactly how old he was at the time. You know, he fought on Dana White's Contender Series a while back, but it was kind of a pretty cool type of thing they did with him. You know, they signed him, but they still gave him time to grow in regards to his MMA career. You know, he had a couple other fights. Actually saw him fight live down here in South Florida a couple months back. Took over in Titan FC. That took place, June 28th, I believe it was. And, you know, he got the rear naked choke. This guy's jiu-jitsu is nasty. I'm telling you guys right now, I've seen it in person. The dude is just really, really long and rangy for the division. He has those long limbs that he can wrap you up in all types of ways. I mean, rear naked chokes, you know, triangle chokes, all types of shit, man. This guy, you know, he's active in the jiu-jitsu game as well, I believe. And this guy's a dangerous fighter. And, you know, now taking on a guy in Daniel Tamer, as I talked about before, Daniel Tamer, you know, if he's able to stuff the takedowns and keep the fight on the feet, he's going to be pressing guys. And if you're not on the level on the feet, he's going to expose you. Don't get it twisted at all. I mean, Daniel is, you know, I mean, what better training partner to have than his brother, David Tamer? David Tamer is one of the most nasty Muay Thai strikers you see in the octagon. You know, these guys are the real deal. You know, Tamer's coming off a pretty good win against Sung Bin Jo. Not the biggest of names, but, you know, before that, you know, he had a three-fight losing skid, but, you know, against solid competition, Chris Fishgold, Julio Arce, Danny Henry, these are solid fighters. So, you know, the point I'm getting to is that Chase Hooper, I'm a big fan of his, and I'm really pulling for him. And I do think he's going to win this fight, but he's going to be facing a real test in Tamer. If he's not able to use his ground game, I could definitely see Tamer teeing off on him and possibly getting the finish. As far as betting goes, got to be careful. You got to be careful. And this is another fight. The line is extremely close, and I think rightfully so. This is a fight. I don't want to get you don't want to get caught up in the betting game. Picking a fighter just because you like him. Because I'm telling you, I could easily see him getting finished in this fight by Tamer, but I just think this kid Hooper is really crafty. I've seen him get tagged up before, and he showed a lot of heart, survived, came back, and then dominated the end of that fight. This he has a lot of X factors going for him. This guy, he's something special, I believe. So, yeah, I'm gonna roll with Hooper to win this fight, and I think he gets a submission. I think he gets this fight to the ground and probably pulls off a rear naked choke. So chase Hooper for the victory. Another fight that you're not going to catch me anywhere besides sitting my ass in front of a TV screen at the bar or wherever I may be, zoned in on this fight, man. Matt Brown taking on Killer B Ben Saunders. I'm a big fan of both of these fighters. These are two OGs of the UFC game. Some of these guys, like Ben Saunders, he's left, he's came back. The guy doesn't win every time he steps in the octagon. In fact, he loses a lot more than he wins, but the guy always puts on a show. He always has a lot of heart. He's going in there to take out his opponents. And, as of recently, the guy's really been just, getting taken out a lot. He's been getting knocked out a lot, and it's been tough to watch because I'm a big fan of the guys. But I still think he's a dangerous opponent. And I think this is a perfect matchup right here against a guy in Matt Brown. He's up there in age as well. He's been through a lot of battles. I think this is a perfect fight. They're basically the same age and very similar fighters. Matt Brown's coming in as the pretty hefty favorite, and it's understandable just because Ben Saunders, Ben Saunders, like I said, he just hasn't been able to win fights. And, and then you got a guy in Matt Brown coming off a beautiful finish against Diego Sanchez, threw that nasty elbow over the top. And then before that, the guys that he's lost to are there at least guys like Donald Cerrone, Damian Maia, Johnny Hendricks back in the day when Johnny Hendricks was, championship Johnny Hendricks on steroids and all that shit. The Robbie Lawlers of the world. Matt Brown, what a perfect name, the Immortal. This guy, he's OD'd. I guess they say that his heart stopped and all, came back, and he fights the same type of way. I've seen this guy dropped with nasty body kicks, and then, you think the fight's over, he gets back up and then pulls off the finish in the third round, wins the fight, against a guy like Eric Silva when Eric Silva was young and on a tear and on steroids as well. Matt Brown's a fucking beast, bro. He really is a beast. And, and then we got Ben Saunders. When Ben Saunders was in his prime, I've seen this guy fight live a lot. Seen him fight, saw him fight one fight that didn't really, wasn't a good look for him. I saw him fight Douglas Lima over in Bellator. That was Bellator 100. I saw that take place over in Arizona when I was living out there for a little bit, and he got put on conscience. I was sitting right beside the cage, man, and he got put out. That was kind of the beginning of his demise. He won a couple of fights after that, but then he made his way back over to the UFC where he just really hasn't been able to win fights. But the point I was making is when he was in his prime, as you see here, when he would get guys in the clinch, he threw some of the most nasty knees I've ever seen in the clinch. Probably the best knees in the clinch I've seen from any fighter, honestly. I know a lot of the times it wasn't against the greatest competition that he was doing it against. But he has some skills, man, to pay the bills. I don't know if I see him yoking up Matt Brown in the clinch and dropping knees like that. I more see Matt Brown. You can even say in the clinch, I can see Matt Brown throwing elbows, throwing tight punches, and just hurting Killer B. Maybe even throw some body shots or even get some in the head. But I think he gets the finish. So definitely going with Matt Brown. And, see what you want to do with that fight. We got Ian Hainish taking on Omari Akhmedov. Two very dangerous, gritty middleweight fighters. Ian Hainish is coming off a tough loss against Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson really just showed, to be on another level inside the octagon that night. I know Derek Brunson took that fight very serious before fight night, and it showed. But that was a fight that I expected Ian Heinisch to go out there and get the W in, and he didn't. Before that, he had victories against guys like Antonio Carlos Jr., Cesar Fajera, and those were two fights where he was the underdog and he really came through. And he was the underdog against Brunson, I believe, as well. No, he was the favorite against Brunson. Yeah, actually, going into that fight, he was the favorite. So that kind of took him a step back, in the wrong direction. But he has an opportunity here to outwork Omari Akhmedov, and he better bring the fight. He better put that pressure on him because, if Omari Akhmedov does have one hole in his game, it's definitely his cardio. You could tell he's very hesitant with throwing because you could see he's always pacing himself. And in the fights that he really let his hands go and whatnot, you could see in the third round he was gasping for air. So, but that being said, Omari Akhmedov is a very dangerous fighter. I like his striking. His sambo wrestling, is good. He uses it to stuff takedowns. He's an absolute beast. I mean, look at the way the guy looks. He's a tank. And I believe he's a little bit of an underrated fighter, especially as of recently. So, I really like Ian Heinisch, and I think if he gets this fight done, it's going to be in the later rounds, or maybe he kind of takes over the fight in the later rounds. But my gut is telling me to take Omari Akhmedov here. Just from what I've seen, I just think that he has very crisp boxing, and I think he'll outbox Ian Heinisch. He'll have the better striking, and as long as he doesn't gas out and do anything stupid in there, I think it's his fight to win. And we know how it is when you're picking these fights. You can't be emotional. I like this guy Ian Heinisch a lot. You don't want to get connected to one fighter and try to be pulling for him and let that steer you the wrong way. So. I'm picking the underdog, Omari Akhmedov here. Underdog pick. Yeah. Up next, we got Ketlen Vieira taking on Irene Aldana. As far as I'm concerned, both of these women are towards the top of the hill in the women's bantamweight division. I like both of these women. This should be a pretty good fight right here. As far as value goes, I would say it's on Irene Aldana. She's a very feisty, very aggressive women's fighter. Sometimes, she gets away with the fact that she's not the most skilled. She's not the most polished fighter, but she's very aggressive. She's very big. She usually just kind of imposes her will upon her opponents. Although I do believe this is a tough matchup for her. Ketlen Vieira, very physically imposing herself, in great shape. But she has the skills to go along with it. Great jiu-jitsu, great striking. This girl, she's really been showing what she's made of, especially as of recently. She had a big win in her last fight against Kat Zingano. Was able to pull off that split decision victory. Kat Zingano, a crafty fighter who's been around for a long time. That was a big win for Ketlen. And then this is another big fight for her here. Irene Aldana is absolutely no joke in regards to the women's bantamweight division. And if you take her lightly, you're gonna have a tough night out there. So. You saw what, in Irene Aldana's last fight, you saw what she did against Vanessa Melo, just completely outclassed her in there. Vanessa Melo had no business being in the octagon with her, so although she didn't get the finish, she still just completely outclassed her in there. But the split decision loss to Raquel Pennington wasn't a good look for her. I'm not that high in Raquel Pennington, even though she's known to do that in a lot of her fights. She makes them, close fights. She's tough. She's not easy to put away. And, that was not a good loss that she took on her resume, because if she didn't lose that fight, she'd be on a nice 5-fight win streak, and she'd have been creeping right up there for a title fight. So what she needs to do now is get this win against Ketlen Vieira and, get the train right back on the track. Although, that's not the route that I'm leaning towards. I'm leaning more towards Ketlen Vieira pulling this fight off. I think she probably wins a decision. I just think that she's more polished in there at this point in the game, and we'll have to see how this plays out. But I'm going to take Ketlen Vieira. We have another fire fight on this card. We got Mike Platinum Perry taking on Jeff Hands of Steel Neal. In my opinion, this fight, it's flying under the radar a little bit. It's some of the bigger names towards the top of the card. But this fight right here, make no mistake about it, this fight is going to be nonstop action, straight fire. Mike Platinum Perry, this is a guy that brings it every time he steps into the octagon. He's coming off a tough loss, a split decision loss against Vincent Luque. Vincent Luque is no joke, and that fight played out very closely. I had Vincent Luque winning that fight easily. That was actually one of my plays, but a lot of people thought Mike Perry won that fight. I mean, I kind of see. I guess I kind of see how some people were saying, he kind of brought it towards the end of the fight. He was pressuring and he was throwing more power shots. He was connecting with some hooks, but Vincent Luque, in my opinion, was just kind of peppering him up. And then once he hit him with that flying knee and broke his nose, I think that pretty much sealed that last round. But just the sheer damage that he caused to Mike Perry. But nevertheless, like I said, Vincent Luque is a top-notch fighter, so no shame in that loss. Before that, he took out Alex Oliveira. That's a nice, credible win to have on your resume. You guys know what happened in the Cowboy Cerrone fight. And then what about the Paul Felder fight? Paul Felder is a stud of a fighter. And Mike Perry looked great in that bout. So don't get it twisted. Mike Perry is the real deal. He carries a lot of power. He could put anybody away. If he connects, he's putting anybody out in the division. He's not the most polished with his striking. I kind of wish that he would polish up his boxing a little bit, throw his hands more down the pipe. He kind of telegraphs his hooks, but he puts a lot of power behind those. And like I said, if he connects, he's going to put you out. And then you look at his opponent, Jeff Neal. This is a guy that, speaking of flying under the radar, this is a guy that was really flying under the radar as of recently, but people are starting to take note of this guy. We got a 6-fight win streak that he's on now. Just took out Nico Price, finished Nico Price, by the way, with some nasty ground and pound. Took out Belil Muhammad, Frank Camacho, Brian Camozzi. He's been looking good. He's been looking really good, and he's well-rounded. He's a solid fighter. And I'm going to lean towards Jeff Neal taking this fight. But at the same time, as far as betting goes, I don't think there's any value on him, or with the line being around. If you take a look at it now, you would have to take Jeff Neal right around minus 250 to 270, somewhere in that range. I would never touch that. Mike Perry can definitely spoil your party Saturday night if you have money on Jeff Neal. Mike Perry can win the fight by knockout, or this fight may play out closely on the feet. And Mike Perry he's a fan favorite, so the crowd's going to be rooting him on. Don't ever forget about that. You always have to take that into consideration. It does play a factor when the judges are making their decision. So just be careful. And I don't know if that line is really where you want it, but I definitely do have Jeff Neal to win the fight. Man, do I get excited anytime I hear the California Kid is stepping back into the octagon. Here he's taking on Peter Yan. And like I said, anytime I hear he's fighting, I'm excited to see him fight. But this one, it's really special. He's coming off a solid victory after a long layoff, coming back, taking out a guy like Ricky Simone, who is a very tough fighter. You saw Ricky fight this past weekend. Yes, it was against one of my plays in Rob Font, and I did fade him. But, make no mistake, Ricky Simone is a solid fighter, and you saw him in that, and even in his last fight, even though he lost that fight, he has some great strengths, very good grappling. He's a tough dude, and nevertheless, he's extremely tough. So just the sheer fact that Uriah Faber finished him with the overhand right in the first round like that, there's a lot of momentum coming behind the California Kid. There's only one problem. His opponent is Peter Yan. This guy is an absolute beast, an absolute stud. This guy is a true threat to the title as far as the bantamweight division goes. This guy, he's something else. He really is something else. When you get locked into a cage with a guy like this, I think it's pretty much a fighter's worst nightmare. This isn't the type of guy that's just going to go in there and just put you to sleep necessarily. What he does is even worse. He just brings a constant pressure, breaks you down, and just puts damage into your brain, your body. He hurts you. He puts pain. He inflicts pain onto you. This guy is the truth. And, I've been riding the train as far as Peter Yan goes for a long time. Those of you guys that have been listening to me, you guys know what I'm talking about. I played him in the past. I parlayed him because a lot of times it's hard to get him at a decent line. I did take him against Jimmy Rivera. That was a nice hit. This guy's the truth. And this is going to be a tough fight for me because I'm a big Uriah Faber fan. But I just don't see any way at the age that Uriah Faber's at, and let alone even Uriah Faber in his prime. I just don't see him taking out a guy like Yan. This guy Yan is the real deal. training over at Tiger Muay Thai over there. His Muay Thai is just some of the best you'll see in the division. And he kind of has his own style with it, and he's just ruthless. Jan just took out guys like, he took out Jimmy Rivera, John Dodson, Douglas Andrade. So, we're not talking about the biggest of names necessarily, but take my word when I say this guy is the real deal. So, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to go with Peter Yan to win the fight. As far as the line goes, I would say, this would be a fight I probably wouldn't touch, but yeah, the value would have to be on Uriah Faber. Maybe he shows up once again and he shocks the world. Obviously, Uriah Faber is a very capable fighter, great grappler, great striker, great fighter IQ. Obviously, he's been taking care of his body as good as a person can take care of his body. So even though he's 40 years old, he probably has the body of like a 36-year-old, 35-year-old. This guy is really taking care of himself throughout the year. So I'm definitely pulling for Uriah Faber to win this fight. I really hope he does. I think it would put a stamp on the night and just make the night, no matter what happens, I think that would make it a great night. But I just do not see it happening. Peter Yan to win the fight. And I think Yan is probably going to even get a finish. I don't know. Faber's tough. He hangs in there, so maybe not. I don't know. I kind of see Yan getting a finish, but maybe a decision. I don't know. That one's going to be hard to call. But Yan to win the fight. So we'll move on from breaking down one Hall of Famers fight upcoming this Saturday, and we'll work our way over to a future Hall of Famers fight in Jose Aldo, who's taking on Marlon Moraes. This is a perfect matchup here. Of course, Jose Aldo is making his way down to the bantamweight division. We got to see how that plays a role Saturday night. It's one of those things we're just going to have to see to really know how that affects him. I've seen some pictures of him, as you see here. He looks very drained. Other pictures, he looks a little bit better. He's flashing the abs and whatnot. But this is just a great matchup. You got two amazing Brazilian strikers. Marlon Moraes, this is a guy I'm a big fan of as well. He's made me money in the past. Although he did drop the ball in his last fight. He came out strong, started the first round very well against Henry Cejudo, worked in the leg kicks. He was chopping away at Henry Cejudo. If you could have did a live bet on that fight, you would have bet the house that Marlon Moraes was going to run away with that fight. But Henry Cejudo really dug deep, and he put a nasty beating onto Marlon Moraes. So that's another thing that we're going to have to wait till Saturday to see how it plays out, because the amount of damage that Marlon Moraes took in that fight, those are the type of fights that really they affect your career long term. He was eating knee after knee, and he wouldn't go out, so he was just surviving and taking a crazy amount of damage from Henry Cejudo until he finally got finished. He's had some time, to rebound. It's been about 6 months up, at this point. I don't know, 6 months for the amount of damage he took in that fight. Maybe that was enough, maybe not. And then, like I said, the other X factor: how is Jose Aldo going to perform, at the bantamweight division? Jose Aldo's coming off a tough loss to Alexander Volkanovski, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit. No shame in that loss. Volkanovski's the real deal. And before that, he had two beautiful wins against Moicano and Jeremy Stevens. So this is a tough fight to call. You take a look over at the line right now, and people are favoriting Marlon Moraes, and I can understand why. I definitely can understand why. There's a lot of unknowns how Aldo's going to perform at this weight class. And, besides those two wins that I talked about here a second ago, Aldo was, he was getting beat up a lot by the younger fighters these days, the studs of the division. So, but, you also have to realize those guys that were beating him were top guys, Conor McGregor, Max Holloway, and then Volkanovski. So, do not sleep on Aldo. This is another fight. I'm going to say the value is definitely on Aldo, in my opinion. I think, this is like a dog or pass type of fight. Unless you feel strongly about Moraes, unless you have some insider knowledge, you feel like, he's all good, he healed up well, and, he had a great training camp. Maybe you feel like that's the right move. I don't feel like I want to touch this fight at where I see the odds. I'll let you guys know that right now. But I will take Marlon Moraes to win this fight. We got the women's champ, and Amanda Nunes, the Lioness. What a savage she is. Really just, I talked about it earlier. I talked about Valentina Shevchenko and I talked about Amanda Nunes. No matter what side of the fence you're on, some of you guys might hate, in my opinion, but I do think that Shevchenko is the best women's fighter. But Nunes, no matter what you want to say, Nunes is definitely a top 2, and I'm sure for a lot of you guys, she's the number 1. So, no matter how you have it, no shame in that. But Nunes is a savage. This girl, she's an amazing fighter. And, she has a fight here against a girl that she's already beat in Germaine de Randamie. But Germaine de Randamie, she looked amazing in her last fight. Beautiful, right. I want to say a straight right. It was maybe like a hook on it, but just a beautiful right hand that connected on Aspen Ladd. Maybe you want to call it a right cross. Just took her out early, followed it up with some ground and pound, and showed to be light years above the level of Aspen Ladd as far as the striking goes. Shout out to Aspen Ladd too. Nice tough victory she had this past weekend. But Germaine de Randamie, this is a girl. Like I said, she lost to Amanda Nunes. That was some time ago. We're talking 2013. We're talking 6 years ago. A lot has changed, especially up until that point, because Germaine de Randamie was a straight Muay Thai fighter at that time. Her game has evolved a lot, and I know you guys haven't been able to necessarily see a lot of that in the octagon. But, someone that has insider knowledge and someone that knows how the training and how the game goes, years upon years, you're training, your game's going to evolve, your jiu-jitsu game, your grappling. And Germaine de Randamie, she needs to keep this fight on the feet, make this a striking match. That's going to be her first goal. And then her second goal is going to be to try to outstrike a girl, and Amanda Nunes, who's an excellent striker as well. So Amanda Nunes, as good as Germaine de Randamie is on the feet, the Muay Thai champion and all, Amanda Nunes is striking, as far as MMA striking goes, it's just some of the best I've ever seen. Coming off a nasty, head kick finish against Holly Holm. Before that, took out Cyborg. Absolutely dismantled Raquel Pennington. And then, we go back to the Valentina Shevchenko fight, the split decision victory. Of course, what she did to Ronda Rousey, but we don't need to talk about that. But I'm really excited for this fight. I don't typically get super excited for female fights. This is definitely one that I am excited for. This women's fight blends right in with all the big name men fights on the card. All the big names, the Max Holloway fights, the Colby Covingtons, all that. Kamaru Usman fights. This is a big fight here, and I know you guys are just as excited for this fight as I am. And, of course, I'm going to have to take Nunes to win this fight. She already defeated Germaine de Randamie. I do give her the edge as far as the grappling goes. I give her the edge as far as her camp goes, training over at American Top Team. She's going to be so well prepared for this fight, and you have to give her the edge to win this fight. Now, that being said, I definitely do believe Germaine de Randamie is a true threat to win this fight. If she's able to keep it on the feet and make this a striking bout, she could beat anybody in the world as far as women go in a striking match. So do not be surprised if Germaine de Randamie pulls off the upset. Right now she's around a plus 230. Amanda Nunes is right around a minus 300. I guess rightfully so. I don't know. This is the type of fight that, as of now, I really want nothing to do with. But again, I'll take Amanda Nunes to win this fight by decision. As we work our way up to the co-main event of the evening, we have quite possibly the greatest featherweight champion of all time. For those of you guys that agree with that, comment below. If you guys think it's Conor McGregor or Jose Aldo, depending what your feelings on that whole thing are. Conor McGregor never defended the featherweight belt, although you know what he's done in his career and who he's taken out inside the featherweight division. But Max Holloway defeated Jose Aldo twice, defended the belt more than anybody, and there's no excuses as far as the Jose Aldo losses, because Jose Aldo, it wasn't like he was an old man. If you really look at the age that he was when they fought, there's no reason why you can't say he was in his prime. I know he went through a lot of wars and whatnot, but I think Max Holloway is probably the greatest featherweight of all time. And now he's taking on a guy in Alexander Volkanovski that wants to put his name up in that conversation to quite possibly be one of the greatest featherweights of all time. in the near future. Obviously, he has a lot of work ahead of him to get to that point, and it all starts Saturday against Max Holloway. But don't get it twisted. Alexander Volkanovski definitely has the potential to do that. He's 31 years old. Now's the time. He's coming off a great win against Jose Aldo. Just completely outclassed him in there. Before that, just brutalized Chad Mendes. He's taken guys out like Jeremy Kennedy, Darren Elkins. Not the biggest of names, but ever since he's entered the octagon for the first time, got a nice finish in there in the second round. And just since then, he's been stringing off win after win after win. And actually, he's just been doing that his whole career, really. I mean, he's only had one loss, and he was finished in that fight, too. In his fourth professional fight, he got head kicked and finished. So, but I've never seen anything on tape that's ever shown me that he has problems with his chin or his defense. I think that was more of just a fluke loss early in his career, because this guy is the real deal. I think he's going to be able to stand and trade with Max all day. Great footwork. He's a shorter guy, but the way that he moves around the octagon, he's very good with his footwork. He's always in the right position. And Max Holloway is going to be walking him down, or at least trying to put that volume on him. I'm really excited to see how this fight's going to play out. It's, I got an edge that I believe that Max Holloway is going to get the better of the exchanges, just because Max is so great at what he does. I mean, you saw what he did again against Frankie Edgar in his last fight. Maybe you can kind of say Frankie's a similar opponent to Alexander Volkanovski, similar, statures and whatnot. And then, really the only little asterisk I would say as of recently in regards to Max Holloway was that loss to Dustin Poirier. Because Dustin Poirier, what he did was he sat in the middle and he exchanged, which is probably what Volkanovski is going to do. So is Volkanovski striking on the Dustin Poirier level? I don't know about that. As of right now, I got to say I'm leaning Max Holloway. I'm taking Max Holloway to win this fight. But I would not be surprised if Volkanovski pulls it off. I think this guy is the type of guy. I mean, how can you be surprised if he beats anybody? He's 20-1. This guy's lost one fight, the fight I talked about. Other than that, he just wins fights. The guy's he's a brute, strong, just a moose of a fighter. And, I'm really excited. Let's see how this fight plays out. I got Max Holloway to win the fight. Let me know who you guys got. I know some of you guys out there have to be going with Volkanovski, at least a couple of you guys. I'm sure the majority is definitely going Max Holloway, but I'm sure there's a couple Volkanovski guys out there, especially as far as betting goes. I mean, if you get him around plus 150 or whatnot, you got to see a little bit of value in that. But then again, is Max Holloway just on another level, and you just pick that money up and capitalize on one of the greatest fighters to ever do it, or maybe you just sit back and you skip this fight and you just enjoy it just for sheer entertainment purposes. Max Holloway to win the fight. Fight, a black and a white. Come on, you guys know you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking. And if you're not thinking that, you're fooling yourself, because you got Colby Covington, the white fighter who rocks the Make America Great hat again, taking on the Nigerian-born African-American. Kamaru really hasn't gone into the whole politics thing, but I think he's made it clear he's not a Trump fan from a few things I've seen him say. And Colby's obviously, he reps the Trumps, and, he reps America and whatnot. I don't want to get too much into the whole political thing. I prefer to stay out of that no matter what my views are or whatnot. I want to kind of analyze this fight just straight up based on abilities and who's going to win this fight. But the reason why I bring all that up is I want you guys to know, don't fool yourselves, because there's going to be a lot of eyes on this fight from a lot of people that don't typically watch UFC or watch mixed martial arts. The Fugazis, the guys the people that come around and watch the fights for the big cards. You're going to see a lot of new fans watching. This is a great fight to get new people to come over to the sport, but all that aside, we have two great fighters that, in my opinion, are almost identical. You got two 15-1 opponents, both of them are 15-1. You got Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman, 15-1. You got Colby, he's 31 years old, about to be 32. You got Kamaru Usman, 32 years old. They're about almost the same height. Colby's 5'11", Kamaru's 6 foot. Kamaru has that 1 inch reach, although Kamaru does have about a 5.5 inch reach. We'll see how that plays out. I don't think it'll have too much of a factor. I think it's going to come down to who has the better cardio, the better grappling, the better wrestling. I think we're going to find out, which is, it's such a treat to see that, because when you have two fighters like this that have absolutely dominated everybody that they fought, as of recently, just both of them having that one blemish, these guys have dominated everybody. I feel like this is kind of like the immovable object getting penetrated by the relentless force, however you want to say that shit. Because Colby Covington, I'll tell you what, love him or hate him, if you guys don't appreciate what this guy has been doing inside the octagon, or at least respect it, you guys are fools. I've never seen anybody put a pace like Colby Covington. Straight up, I've never seen anybody put a pace. Not Nick Diaz, not Nate Diaz, none of them. And his striking's coming around. He doesn't have that real pop on his striking, but it's just like the worst type of striking that you can fight against. Because if you start to gas out, he's just going to keep peppering you up. He's going to humiliate you. He's going to sit there, stick his tongue out at you, and he's just going to pepper you up. And the Muay Thai is getting better. It really is getting better. And he can go just straight up like 95%, 95 to 98%, almost 100% the entire fight. He can literally just push that pace the entire fight. He's not going to gas out. From what I've seen from him, I just don't see it. Although, I mean, this fight may play out a little bit differently, because you got a guy in Kamaru Usman. He's going to make it a little bit harder for you to get those takedowns and to push that pressure on him and that pace. When someone's stuffing your takedowns and making you work, that we're going to see how good your cardio is then. Kamaru Usman, what he did to Tyrone Woodley in his last fight was absolutely amazing. I haven't seen anybody do that to Tyrone Woodley ever, period. I've never seen somebody wrestle fuck him and just grind him out like that. Tyrone Woodley is a Division I. I know he was a Division I wrestler. I believe he was even, I don't know if he was a champ or whatnot. He had high accolades as far as Division I wrestling goes. I mean, great wrestling credentials. Kamaru Usman was a Division II wrestler. Just to give you a note on that. But it was amazing what he did. I mean, he went in there and he just broke Tyrone Woodley. I love the way he gets the takedowns against the cage. I mean, he smothers guys against the cage, and he pulls those legs out from under them. Great cardio as well. I think that Kamaru has a little bit more power in the hands. I think that one-shot power. So if somebody was to get knocked out in this fight with the one-shot punch, I think Kamaru would be the guy knocking out Colby. However, I don't think that's that likely, and I think other than that, I think that Colby has the edge in regards to the striking. As far as the volume goes, he'll start to work that Muay Thai, pepper him up with the leg kicks, and just keep throwing the 1-2, the southpaw style striking that Colby has. It's very dangerous. One fight I do want to bring up was the Emil Meek fight against Kamaru Usman. That was a fight that Usman didn't look so great in. So even though he has dominated a lot of guys, as of recently, a lot of big names, he didn't look that great in that fight. At the time, he was saying that he just wasn't motivated and he wasn't training 100%. That may be the case. It may be the case. Colby Covington is also a guy, he got guillotine choked by Wallery Alves. Let me tell you something right now. I used to grapple with a lot of high-level wrestlers, and wrestlers in the beginning of their mixed martial arts career, they don't respect the guillotine as much as they should. I used to guillotine wrestlers all day that would stick their head right in my arm. So, he made that mistake then. I think since then, man, that guy, Colby, he's learned from that. That ain't happening. I really don't see that happening. I mean, this guy's putting in time at American Top Team for like almost the last decade at this point. Funny story too, back when Colby was unheard of, I believe even before he even had his first UFC fight, right around 2000, I would say around like 2010 or so, I believe it was. I saw him at a pool down the street from my house, a little apartment complex pool. He was chilling with some girl. I saw his tattoo in the back of his shoulder, the D1, whatever, the USA wrestling tattoo. And back then, of course I knew what that was and whatnot, so I said a little something to him. And he was respectful. He was a cool dude, just sitting there with this girl. It's funny, years and years later, this guy's main eventing one of the biggest fight cards of the year. It just shows you how small the world is, especially in South Florida, though. There's fighters everywhere. But, okay, let's get to the point now. We got a big decision to make. Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. I've been on the fence with this fight. I've been back and forth. But I'm going to give it to you guys. I got Colby Covington to win this fight. I got the underdog, Colby Covington, to pull this fight off. I think his wrestling and his cardio is going to be a little bit better than Kamaru Usman. And I think his striking is going to be a little bit better too. So if Kamaru doesn't just work him with a solid right or something and rock Colby and put him off his off his equilibrium off in the beginning, where maybe he starts to just lose the fight from there. If that doesn't happen, if there's not that big shot that changes the fight, and they just kind of sit there and dance around, do the little pepper in, the little pitter patter fighting, and then work the wrestling, I think Colby Covington will outshine Usman. But there's something else I want to say too. You guys have to take this into consideration. Colby Covington has been a big advocate for the Trumps and whatnot. I talked about it earlier. If you don't think that the judges that are judging this fight, if this fight plays out closely, if you don't think that, how he's been openly a Trump supporter, if those judges just so happen to be against Trump, maybe they're Democrats, whatever you want to say, they're liberals or Democrats, I'm telling you, do not be surprised if Colby gets robbed, because I really do believe that he better have some judges that are moderates or whatnot, that are down the middle or towards the Republican side, because otherwise, I'm telling you, the liberals will rob him on this fight. And remember, I said that. We have this recorded right here. If this fight plays out closely, he will lose this fight if the judges, which most likely, they're probably going to be against Trump. I just have this gut feeling. But unless Colby just dominates, I see Colby maybe dominating the fight. Because I don't know. There's just so many different ways this fight can go. But as far as value goes, definitely the value's on Colby. And, I guess I'll just stop there. We'll leave it at that. We're going to have to see what happens this Saturday. As far as betting goes, I think the value is definitely on Colby. I'll say it again. For those of you guys that are touching Usman up at minus 190, minus 200, or anywhere around that range, let me know. Comment below who's taking Usman at those odds. I want to hear about it. And that's going to wrap up UFC 245. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdowns. I'm telling you guys right now, the same way I told you guys last weekend, I said it was going to be a profitable weekend. I went 2 for 2. That was perfect on the entire card. This is another card where I really do feel I have some great spots. I'm telling you guys. That nice break we had over the Thanksgiving, those couple weeks we had for Thanksgiving and whatnot with no UFC fights for about 2-3 weeks. I had a lot of time to cram tape for last week's card and this UFC 245 card. And I have some special spots here to make some money. You know what I always tell you guys? For those of you guys that are interested in those picks and interested in joining the team, make sure you reach out to me, DM me on Instagram or comment below, however you want to get a hold of me. But don't miss out. I'm telling you guys, there's money on the table for this weekend, easy money on the table. So I feel very confident about it. And other than that, of course, I do have the promo. If you guys sign up to Bovada through my referral link, I'll give you a free month of all my exclusive picks. So that is always on the table for you guys. Shout out to everyone that's been taking advantage of that. A lot of you guys have been reaching out to me, and it's been a lot of fun making money with you guys. Shout out to everybody that made money with me last weekend. I know you guys were all excited about that or this past weekend. So, we killed the books last weekend. And, other than that, I guess there's not much to say. It's getting late over here. I just saw an excellent movie. I highly recommend, if you guys haven't seen the Joker movie, you guys definitely got to check that Joker movie out. I knew that movie was going to be good, but that movie was on a whole another level. An amazing, amazing film. The storyline was just fantastic. So make sure you guys check the Joker out. And other than that, I guess at this point, there's nothing else left to do besides signing out, the teller.